Well, to get started, I need to take you to Holly Miller's world, the main character of my novel. So I'm going to talk about parking. So I want you guys to imagine you're in a car, driving, and you have 5 other people in this car with you. You've just crossed the bridge, you're in the city, you're looking for parking, you're driving around. The passenger next to you says, over there, over there. So you start to turn the car left, and then the person in the back seat, one of the people in the back seat says, no, no, that's a fire hydrant, go right, go right. So you start to turn right. Another one of your passengers just starts offering up a prayer to the parking gods, while the one in the very back says, we will never find parking. So you hear these voices to the point where you become so exasperated, then you finally want to turn around to one of them and say, you drive. Well, if you were Holly Miller, you could say, you drive. And you could move over and somebody else would take over the wheel. So Holly is the main character of my new novel, Sounds Like Crazy, and she has dissociative identity disorder. And a far more serious form of this was made famous by Sybil back in the day, when it was known as multiple personality disorder. And the difference is that Holly has the co-conscious version, so she has 5 people living inside her head. These people wear clothes, they wear lipstick, they smoke cigarettes, break for parking, and they offer minute-by-minute commentary and objections over every little detail of her life. Now, Holly has been dealing with this situation, and it's made it impossible for her to do anything but the simplest form of work since leaving college. And then she's offered the opportunity of a lifetime. The chance to take the starring role in an animated television show, but there is a catch. She has to use the voice of Betty Jane, who is a cruel Southern belle who lives inside her head and makes her life hell on a good day, according to Holly. So, with that, I will start. I was dressed and waiting in the lobby of my building at 7:45. At exactly 8 o'clock, a shining black town car pulled up, ready to take me to the proverbial dance. Inside my head, I had a woman who was determined to be the Southern belle of the ball. As the front door to my apartment building shut behind me, I heard Betty Jane whisper, I have arrived. I watched the city pass as the car cruised to the Chelsea Piers. We're in New York City here, where we were taping the show. I had learned from Brenda, my agent, that it was unusual to do an animated show in New York, but Mike Davey, the producer of the show's stature, or director, made it possible. He wanted to be in New York, we were in New York. Lucky me, I wasn't thin enough to move to Los Angeles. Anyway, constant sunshine depressed me. When we pulled into the Piers, the driver rolled down his window and said, audition for the neighborhood? I rolled down my window. Which part, said the guard. The star, I said with a smile. I alternated between feeling embarrassed about my comment and the warm glow from Betty Jane's nod of approval. The receptionist told me to have a seat. Mike Davey would be out in a moment. I dropped my bag on the chair next to me and opened it. I wanted to make sure I had all my highlighters, water, perfume, and of course 2 rolls of Charmin toilet paper that Betty Jane made me carry with me everywhere. This was one of her rules, only Charmin, nothing else. My options were to bring the toilet paper or never be able to use a bathroom that didn't stock Charmin. This narrowed my choices to my apartment or my mother's house. I felt a hand lightly touch my shoulder. Hello, Holly. I turned to see Mike's smiling face. My eyes lit up and I smiled back at him. Then Walter, the show's producer, appeared behind Mike. I extended my smile to him. He didn't return it. The corners of my mouth dropped as fear nipped at the outer corners of my eyes. Make sure our little waitress is ready for the suits, Walter said to Mike. He walked away, tapping his watch. Walter had discovered me in the diner when I was waiting tables, barely. The suits? How have you been? Did you enjoy the training? Asked Mike. Yeah, I said shyly. I, for one, am not a fan of any formal acting lessons. Training on the job is enough for someone who has a natural talent, said Mike. Oh, voiceover classes are good because you can learn technique, how to work on a mic, how to use your voice. But as soon as some teacher starts messing with your acting instincts, the next thing you're worried about doing something wrong, I say the best and the easiest way is to go strictly by instinct. Ad-lib a little, a bit if the spirit moves you. Don't be totally tied to the script. I nodded. Mike led me by the elbow down the hall. Before he opened the door, he said, "We've auditioned a good pool of talent, so the competition is stiff." The room was stuffed with at least 30 people. Mike told me these were the other actors, writers, plus a few interns and hangers-on. Walter and a couple of guys stood over by the wall talking. Judging by their attire, I guess these were the unexplained suits. All was quiet in my head. Though she wouldn't admit it, I think even Betty Jane was a bit unnerved. "Those are the network guys," whispered Mike, pointing over at Walter. "They wanted to see what they've been paying for the last 30 days. One of them has his heart set on a woman we auditioned yesterday." His honesty made me understand why my mother spent her life avoiding the truth and taught me to do the same. I smiled, but I wanted to scream, "This is not helping me." "It's always a little stressful when they're here," said Mike. They have approval rights over who we choose for the lead." I thought Walter, "Let's get started, shall we?" said Walter. Mike led me into the sound booth and pointed at an empty music stand with an individual microphone in front of it. Then he introduced me and I waved at everyone. The console on the other side of the glass was crowded with Walter, the suits, Mike, the writers, and a whole bunch of other people with already forgotten names. "Are there always this many people at a recording?" I whispered to the guy next to me. "Not usually, but Walter has a lot riding on you, and everyone is here to see if his little waitress..." He paused, and I suppressed a facial expression. Everyone wants to see if Walter's little waitress passes muster. "All right, no pressure," he said. I didn't hear anything comforting in his voice. I scanned the other faces behind the mics and music stands and found nothing warm in any of them. "Let's pick up at the beginning," said Mike through the talkback. I closed my eyes and thought, please don't let me be humiliated, as I floated backward and Betty Jane took over. We read past line 14 and it was finally time for Violet. That's the part that Betty Jane's auditioning for. I read the script through Betty Jane's eyes. Violet had a good 2 pages worth of bantering with a couple of other actors. After the first few lines, it was clear Betty Jane was in the zone. Mike hadn't indicated a stopping point, so the dialogue continued. My wandering thoughts wondered if he had done this to help me. Then I had a guilty thought about Peter, my boyfriend, and Betty Jane faltered a bit. "Focus, Holly." Betty Jane found her rhythm again, in time to do her last couple of lines. "Oh, agony!" exclaimed Betty Jane as she threw out my arms. "What's she doing?" I thought. "That's not in the script." Cut. Walter, Mike, the writers in the suits huddled outside the booth. One of the writers pointed at the paper in front of him. "Oh shit, do we wait? Should we go out?" I couldn't ask any of these questions because Betty Jane was still in control. Mike motioned through the glass. I stood in the committee's living room inside my head, and then I felt the transition between me and Betty Jane. Once back in control, I blinked my eyes and squeezed my toes in my shoes. I had read somewhere that this brings an errant spirit back into the body. I didn't feel any different. I pushed the door open in front of me. It felt impossibly heavy, but I knew under other circumstances it would probably be feather light. "You changed the script," accused one of the writers. Mike shushed him. "Oh," I had said pensively, well, it just kind of felt like how Violet would end a conversation. Is it okay that I did that?" "It was inspired," said the suit who had his heart set on someone else. I'll say it was inspired. Betty Jane ended every conversation she didn't like with this phrase, as if she were Jesus on the cross. "Love it. Go with it. Write it in. Hire the waitress. Walter, lunch?" Walter nodded. "And get her a pop shield," he said as he ushered the 2 suits out the door.